So here's the effect I'm going to show you how to create in this episode. Right, so this is just going to be like a sci-fi grid kind of looking thing. As you can see, we have some really nice subtle animation going on, and this is completely 3D, so I can grab my camera and just zoom out and orbit around and pretty much do whatever you want with it. Alright, so let's get started. Let me make a new project. No. New composition. First off, we're gonna start by making one tile, then we're gonna see how we can repeat that and clone it in a grid-like fashion, and then we're just gonna use that layer to create some of the effects shown in the preview that I showed you before. So let's name this tile, and I'm gonna use 250 by 250. Make the duration. Make sure your tile duration is actually like longer with by a few seconds than your actual project. If you're planning to use this in a project, make sure your tile composition is longer than your actual project. So if you have a project that's like 150 frames, your tile composition should be like 300 frames, just so it has enough time to cycle through the random loops of the animation. I'm gonna show you what that is in a second. So I'm gonna make this 150, and now we can create our tile. I will start off by making a new solid, make it white. Okay, let's double click our mask. This will add a new rectangle mask. As you can see, make this smaller, and I will set the mask to subtract. Actually, I need this a little thinner. Let me make another new solid, so that's Control Y, by the way. Hit OK, and I will create another new mask, and for this I want to make it a little bit thicker. I will use subtract for this, and now if I duplicate this mask, so click it and Control D, this will duplicate the mask, so this gives me a new mask. Now if I double click point on the second mask, then I can turn it around like this. Control Z that, so if you hold down shift while turning around, it will snap 45 degrees, and this is what we want. And now I can grab this mask and make it smaller or larger depending on your needs. So this is pretty much the effect that that gives us, creating like a nice looking, a more interesting looking border than just having a nice white like stroke kind of background. So this is something a little bit more interesting. And also I can grab my original mask, my first mask, and make this just a bit thinner. So this is the effect that it gives us. Now I'm gonna select both layers and pre-compose this. So Control Shift C on your keyboard, or you can go to Layer, Pre-compose, and I will press T while selecting this layer, and then I will set the opacity to 75%. And now I want to make like for each corner of this composition, I want to have like a quarter circle going on over each side. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go and hold click, I can then choose my ellipse tool, and I will double click this to add my ellipse in the scene. And I won't be needing the fill for this, so you can go ahead, select fill and delete. Set your stroke for the ellipse to be like maybe 3 pixels. We can also change that later. And now I can make my ellipse, let's see, I can make the size smaller, something like this. And now I will just try to match its center with the corner of my composition. You can also use your keyboard to do this, or your arrow keys on your keyboard, and increase the size here, make it like 2 pixels, let's say. Alright, so now I can duplicate this ellipse, so Control D, and I will move it to the side, to the other corner, use my arrows, and now I can select both of these, Control D, and now just move it down below. Wait Wait a sec, sorry about that. We have to select both our ellipses. So ellipse 4 and 3. And now if I hold shift while using arrows, then it will increase the position that they're moving at. So this looks like they're pretty much centered. So that's it for that. Also, if I just select my shape layer now, I can go and change their stroke width. So that's something good to keep in mind. Let's see, what else do we have to do. Let's make a rectangle shape. So double click this. Let's scale this down. And I won't be needing fill for this, so delete the fill. And let's make this a little bigger. And now I just want to connect each circle with this new rectangle shape. So I will just use my pen tool. And with this I can just make some strokes. So from each corner of my rectangle, the new rectangle we've created, we can make some new strokes that are connecting the rectangle to our quarter circles. Like that. And I think we need to make our new strokes thinner, sorry. So I will use 1 pixel for that. Actually this didn't work, so select your layer, select 1, and yeah, you can see now it affects all of them. What else did we have? So in order to have some sort of animation, we have to create like a pulsating sort of loop going on. So let me show you what I mean by that. I will make a new layer, new solid, and I will animate this layer. So I will set its scale. If you press S, you can set its scale. I will go roughly about where my rectangle shape is. So right about here, this should be fine. Set a keyframe for the scale at 45 at 0, and move to frame 30, and then let's set another keyframe for 100. So this is pretty much the shape, the animation we're going for. And if I select both keyframes now and press F9, I can go to my graph editor, and I can make this animation like a little smooth, something like that. So it will start off fast and then gradually slow down as it progresses. This is what we want. And now here's just a simple expression. I want this to just keep going on and on. So here's a quick loop expression. If I hold Alt and click the stopwatch here, then I can add my loop expression, which is gonna be like this. So wait, it's gonna be loop out. It's very important that the O is capitalized here. So loop out, parentheses, cycle. Make sure this is in between like the little commas things at the top. So it's gonna be cycle, comma, 0, and parentheses, and this is gonna create the loop animation. So if I scrub through the timeline, you can see it keeps going. And now I want to also animate the opacity, so I will hold down shift and press T on my keyboard. This is gonna give me the opacity. And for opacity, I want to set the keyframe for 100 at 0 frames and move to 30 frames and set this to 0 now. And I also want this to loop. So if I select the expression here that we've made for the scale and Control C, we can alt click this stopwatch to create an expression and just Control V, the same expression. And now if I create a RAM preview, you can see it's creating like a pulsating effect. But I don't want this pulsating effect to affect right the center of our rectangle. Just so it's more interesting, I want to buffer out this inside zone. So in order to do that, we can simply create a new solid and make this solid black. And now if I scale this solid down, just so it covers up the rectangle, so maybe 46%, something like this. Now I can set my pulsating layer to be the track matte just use alpha inverted matte. So now it will use this black solid we've just created to mask out the center part of our pulsating layer. So if I press my transparency grid, you can see it's not affecting the center. So this is a quick way to mask out the center. Alright, so I think that's it for the tile composition. Now let's see how we can turn it into a grid. If I go to composition, I will make a new composition, and I will I want the tiles to be 10 by 10, so I'm just gonna add a 0 to the end of it, so it's gonna be 2500. Hit OK. Actually, I'm gonna make the duration also less, so I can use more of the animation. Hit OK, select OK, and now I will drop my tile inside this composition. I don't want to see this, so turn off visibility for this layer. Make a new solid layer, hit OK, and now if you go to Effect, Simulation, and use, which one was it? I think Particle World. I'm looking for Particle World. Oh no, Particle Playground, sorry. So use Particle Playground from Simulation. I don't want the, if I go in my Canon position, I don't want any particles for the Canon option, so I'm just gonna set this to 0. And now for my grid, you can set up the width and height. So this is gonna be the same width and height as the composition. So 2500 by 2500. I want 10 particles across and down, so 10 by 10. And you can see they start to show up here. And now if I go to my layer map, we can use a custom layer, which is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna set it to be the tile, and you can see it already populated our whole scene. And well, something's happening. If I scroll my timeline, you can see more particles keep being added. So these particles across and down, this is actually 10 particles per second. But I don't want that. I just want them generated for the first frame, and then I want them to stay. So I will set a keyframe for both of these options, and I will go one frame in the timeline, and I'm going to set this to 0 now. So now we can see, another thing that we have to do is go to our gravity and just set it to 0. So now we can see we have our grid, and everything's working fine. And now it's very easy to offset this. We can just use relative random in our layer map, and then just give it like a value of 2 maybe, and you can see we have our grid now. So I'm just gonna ramp preview this, and of course you can go back in your tile options, and you can add shapes to it and make it more interesting. So for example, if I add a circular shape here, you can see this will update in our grid composition. So you can make it as complex as you want, as long as you add more details to the tile composition, which is great. And now that we have our grid, we can make our actual composition that we're gonna render. So make a new composition. Let's set this to be 1080p, and duration 100 should be good. And now we can drag our wait, this is gonna be, I'm gonna rename this composition to grid. I forgot to do that. So now in our let's say this is gonna be the render comp. Now in our render comp, I can drag and drop my grid, and if I press F4 and make it 3D, then I can use my rotation tools and flip it horizontally. And well, not really flip it, just turn it around 90 degrees on the x-axis. So while holding shift, I will rotate this twice, and now bring it below. So now you can see it's starting to look like the original project that I showed you in the beginning of the tutorial. Now if I go to layer and add a new camera, I set the camera to be the angle view to 75 degrees, just so it's has a nicer effect to it, and you can see more clearly the 3D. It has a more 3D feel to it. So hit OK here, and let's add our letter. So the classic V. Let's make it white. Let's make this 3D, and let's make sure it's in the center of our screen. So 960 by 540. And now I can just turn my camera around, see how this works. Let me zoom out a bit. So here's what I did in the original the original preview that I've shown you to make it more interesting. Now I can pretty much scale up and down the grid, and here's what I did to make it fit like the whole screen. With your grid selected, you can go to Effect, go to Stylize, sorry, and choose Motion Tile. And now with the Motion Tile selected, you can go to your Mirror Edges option, and make sure this is checked. And now if I increase the output width and the output height, you can see it's pretty much just mirroring across more planes, sorry. And yeah, you can easily make it more, just multiply the grid and make it bigger. So let's say I want this to be 300 by 300, so it's 3 times as big. And make sure you're not setting the width and height too high, like don't use values of 1000 because this will slow down your scene significantly. So 300 by 300 should be fine for this particular project. Now let's see how else we can make it better. In my original preview, I also basically what I did was I used a fractal noise map on top of the grid, and I used that fractal noise map to break it down so it's not the same opacity throughout the whole plane. So let me show you what that means. If I go to layer and make a new solid layer, hit OK, make this 3D, and actually go to my solid settings, and let's just make this 2000 by 2000. So I'm making sure this is like in a square shape. Select OK, and before I turn this around, I will make sure the position is matching the same position as the grid. So I will place it above the grid and turn it around 90 degrees, and just make sure your positions match. So if I press P on this layer and P on this other layer, you can see the position for the grid is down, and like the height is not the same. So I'm gonna use the same height for this, the same Y positioning. So just Control C this and paste it in our black solid. So now they are right on top of each other in the 3D space. And now I want to scale this so it fits the whole grid, just until it fits everything. And now I will add fractal noise to this black solid, as you can see here. Now I want to make the noise type, I want it to be block. I want the complexity to be around 2. And I want to animate a little bit of evolution. So if I Alt and click the stopwatch for the evolution, I can set an expression for that. So this is gonna be time multiplied by 75. So this will just give it a nice animation in time. I'm just gonna make a quick RAM preview to show this. So you can see it's starting to move a bit. It's not really that noticeable, but it just adds a little bit of variation to the animation. And I will also right click this layer, add a new mask. So this will add the mask right around the edges, as you can see. Now I want to set the feather for the mask to be something like 750 pixels, something like that. And I want this to be subtracted. So the map, I want it to be subtracted. And now if I set my grid with the grid selected, I will press F4 and I will set the tracking mate to Luma Mate. Oh, not this one. So maybe I need to set the mask back to add. Alright, so yeah, make sure the mask is set to add. So now it fades out around the edges, and it also has a nice breaking up pattern right here in the middle. So you can see this is without the track matte of the black solid, and this is with the track matte. It just adds more variation and it's a little more broken up. I can also go back to my fractal noise layer, and if I set the transform scale to be something like 200, so it's not as detailed because it looks a little overpopulated. And yeah, you can set up the scale to be higher, and you can see how that affects it. So you can play around with the settings until you get your desired look. And also for the mask, I'm gonna set the mask expansion to be something like a negative value, so it's just more faded around the edges. So this is pretty much how that effect works. Now to make this interesting, we can just add a new layer. Just go to my solid settings and make sure it's make comp size. So this is gonna be our background layer. I'm just gonna use a regular ramp for this. Gonna give it a nice bluish color. Maybe something like this. Place it more below. And then we can let's see, we can set the grid to add, just so it's a little more just sort of blending with the background better. And now for this I can make a new adjustment layer and set the adjustment layer below the V and above all the other layers. And wait, before we do that, if I go to my grid, now I can color this by using a generate fill. Just give it like a nice greenish color, something like this. And now I can go to my adjustment layer, and let's see, we add some curves here, increase the contrast a bit. And also if you use a glow on the adjustment layer, you can already see some nice effects starting to happen. So you can play around with this until you get your desired look. And also the V, I'm gonna set it to transform mode add. Let's add a glow to this. Let's turn on the radius here. And in my original example I also used a copy of this V, and I place it down below, so at the same position as the other layers. Right here I turn this around 90 degrees, and I set this to be like a greenish color. Maybe use a blue for this. And then I just blur this out, just so it creates like a nice reflection or shadow. So this is pretty much the result that you're gonna get. And if I orbit my camera around, you can see everything is 3D, everything can be animated. And let me just make a quick ramp preview, see if everything works as it should. So everything's looking alright, everything's working as it should. As you can see. So pretty much the beauty behind this effect is if you go back in your tile, your original tile composition, then you can readjust your animation here. You can make this as complex as you want, and everything will just update in your main render. So this is the technique that I wanted to share with you guys today. So yeah, this is pretty much it, and thanks for watching.